www, let's go to AOL now because Microsoft wasn't our friend. Look at the connections coming in. So we see wpad.local domain requests. So I guess it's not going to look at wpad on the local network until it can't find wpad in its local domain. See some timed windows.com posts. Let's see, what are we doing? I don't know where the hell it's smoking. Let's see, .2. Now it's looking for an LDAP server. Oh, come on, you suck. It's trying to do DNS lookup still. So we'll fake that real quick. Normally, if you're actually connected to the internet, this goes right away because it'll resolve it. Oh, there we go. Waiting for www.aol.com. So at this point, it finally gave up and tried to connect to it, connect to our SOCKS proxy, all that thing. Now, where's our damn shell? It still hasn't done the web request yet. That's annoying. Yeah, it's annoying. All right. Can't get out of the Microsoft loop. All right, we'll go ahead and set up a DNS server real quick just because it takes 2 seconds. It's hosts, all kinds of fun hosts in here. Let's call it 1.2.3.4 www.bob.com. DNS mask -i dm.8. There we go. And the one test case I didn't try is when we're not actually connected to the internet, whether this whole thing would work, because it wouldn't be able to do DNS lookups. That's annoying. All right, so if we want to be lazy and assume this thing actually did work, in case of DNS resolution, the way this would actually work is you just go to a web page that has a UNC URL inside of it. So I'm going to disable the auto proxy stuff because that's just one way to basically get the connection, but it's not the only way. And now I'm going to go into the web root, create a new HTML file, basically just saying, go ahead and give me this image source equal / / 172.16.233.1, share name, and then bob.jpg, close it out, body, HTML. So pretty straightforward. Now we're in our web browser over here. We're just going to go straight to that IP address and straight to the URL, which is much less cool, but oh well. At least we got it working. Test.html. So go to test.html. It says waiting for. At this point, it's actually trying to do SME connections to that UNC URL. And where's our sniffer? Oh, come on. Anyways, that's what happened for reverting my image before I test it. Let's see. I should be okay. I think the bug at this point is that I unchecked a setting that you normally don't have to worry about. Annoying. So Windows XP by default only allows you to authenticate as the guest user, even if you have a valid username and password. That changes when your box joins a domain. And so I configured the system to say, yes, you're joined to a domain. But apparently when I did a revert of the image, it brought me back to before I set the change. So annoying, but we'll get it. Worst case, I can just run this thing real quick, but that's kind of cheating. Where are we? There you go. Thanks. Policies. Options. Where is this thing? Up. Where is it? Down. All right, here we go. Yeah, local user authenticated as guest. This is what happens when you join a network. This top setting is set for you automatically. That way administrators can actually use your machine and so on. So hopefully Val won't kill me that I just ruined this by doing a revert before I did the test. But anyways, we're all set now. So we go back. You can ignore this crash. That's just new code. And we go to the website, and now we just refresh the site. refresh this site. All right. Damn demos.
Demo goblins.
Yep. 172.16.233. H1, test.html. There we go. So we have a connection back. The first request you see doesn't have a password set. It's just saying, you know, receive a connection from Windows 2002, Service Pack 2, which just means XPSP2. And, oh, right, sorry. One of the things, so Windows gets a little bit weird about network I/O. If you try to connect to a share on a host and it doesn't work, won't let you just try it again real quick. You have to actually give it a different share name. Otherwise, it caches the fact that it didn't work the first time and doesn't automatically retry real quick. So we just randomize the share name. That's actually randomized automatically in my code, so not a big deal. So there we go. Right up. Where's our hash? There we go, finally. Ah, it's only giving us guest. Why do you only give us guest? Ah. All right, screw this damn thing. You gotta restart the computer. That's freaking annoying. All right. We'll get it, damn it. All right, so while that restarts, I'll let Val get a little bit further into his talk so I don't keep embarrassing myself over here. But, yeah.
Yeah, if there's any MCSEs, we'd probably use some help.
Yeah.
Same thing happened to Bill Gates.
So before you get to your demos, let me know, and then we'll swap back and try it.
Okay. All right, just give me a second here to try to get it on both screens up there. Okay, good. All right. So we're going to talk about several different things, starting off with file servers. Network-attached storage systems are safe and secure. Don't worry, because the vendor doesn't really care. A lot of these types of systems have unpatched Samba daemons. They're basically providing shares to Windows boxes using SMB protocol, and they don't necessarily use the latest, greatest patched versions. So there's some examples of this. One of my favorites is OS X, and we'll go into some examples about that in a minute here. There's inconsistent file permissions for different protocols. Samba is awesome. 1999 called, and they want their bugs back. If you're really old school, you might remember the SMB null session problems where you could enumerate users, shares, policies, all kinds of stuff like that. Well, a lot of times on these types of systems, these little appliances that are running SMB, you can still do that stuff. So on a network, all the Windows clients may be patched, may be configured correctly, can't do anything. Look for the network storage appliances. Another good thing that I've seen is that you can actually brute force accounts because they don't do lockouts. So these are some old bugs coming back to haunt new boxes. One example is I was scanning a network looking for open port 139, SMB shares, things like that, and I found one that happened to be an OS X box. The really cool thing is that the user had sent out an email to a news group saying, if everyone used OS X, they'd be totally secure, stupid Windows, blah, blah, blah. And yet they were exporting shares using SMB. On this particular network, the sysadmins actually did vulnerability scans with Nessus, things like that, and they had found, hey, look, you're vulnerable to these things. And the user would say, oh, that's a false positive. I'm running OS X. I'm not vulnerable. We said, okay, you're owned. So on this particular box, we just did the same old school stuff you might have seen before. We did a null session connection, and it accepted us. We used, there's a lot of tools for doing this. Enum is one I like a lot. We enumerated users and shares on this OS X box. They didn't have a lockout policy. There's no restrict anonymous type settings on these systems. So we actually started brute forcing several user accounts until we finally got some with weak passwords. We got a shell, escalated to root, and the user response was, but I'm running OS X. So the point being that just because the platform doesn't necessarily line up with the exploit that you think you're using, give it a try because a lot of systems are vulnerable to these problems.
So as a quick note about Samba versus Metasploit, we actually have a lot of these new Samba vulnerabilities with working exploits inside Metasploit now. So one of the cool things about the Linux exploit for that is we actually return to the vsyscall page. That's that page at oxffffff and your /proc pid maps. What that does allows us to actually have a universal return address for every version of Linux running Samba on x86 and IA32. So it's a really nice exploit, and in the cases where it doesn't work, such as like Ubuntu boxes, we just went ahead and added targets for them too, so they work as well. So those Ubuntu folks shouldn't feel left out. Yes, sir?
Yeah, I'm finding a lot of enterprise copiers are running older Samba as well.
Exactly. So this comment was that a lot of enterprise copiers run an old version of Samba. Many of those are actually Xerox machines running an old version of Solaris, and they use Samba to share out printers to everybody. For example, the Hiroshima newspaper company, right by the Peace Museum in Japan, which for some reason I know actually runs lots and lots of versions of Samba. So anyways, great example of they actually run their entire newspaper on a printer that's exploitable to 10-year-old Samba bugs. So yeah, you can use not only this bug, but trans to root, NT-trans, all those other vulnerabilities to exploit those systems. And we have support for Solaris for this one as well. So yes, you could exploit your printer with this bug.
Yeah, that's a good point. On pen tests, I've often used printers, copy machines, to either like stash my code on the machine to get around TCP wrappers or firewalls. There's all kinds of cool stuff, so don't forget about printers because they can help you get to the next level. Zombie hosts as well. You can use the printers as zombie hosts. Yeah, exactly.
All right, quick note. So the Rise security folks, these are the guys who worked on the original version of I worked on the kind of a proof of concept to get it working, and ended up working with these guys to getting the italic magic overwrite required to make this exploit reliable. So the folks at Rise Security have been working on this for the last 2 months. Like the really sharp guys, it's Raymond and Adriano, and they're not here today, but I told them I'd go ahead and give a shout out for them up here. And so what happened is Tipping Point released the Samba vulnerabilities, and everyone went ahead and started working on the exploits. We all had code working sort of for Linux early on, and then with their help, we got it working really, really well. And of course, I ran into a guy who had his exploit working 3 years ago, and he's like, yeah, damn it, that bug's fixed now. Oh well. So every box from the last 3 years is probably exploitable as well, but he didn't really tell anyone about it. So Tipping Point released advisory. People start working on code for it. Out of nowhere, Symantec released a paper saying, oh, you can exploit this in OS X, and there's no patch for it, and our researchers are able to actually get a remote, reliable exploit, and everything else. Like, okay, great, Symantec, you got any code for that? And of course, no, because they don't release any code. So they had this great paper saying they can exploit it, but never really ponied up and said what they could do with it. So the Metasploit folks and the Rise folks got together and finally got it working in OS X, which involves basically this little heap cookie. So you have to actually XOR your return address with a heap cookie to make it work properly in OS X. And there's this whole research paper about how it works, how to do it, how to avoid it. But the XOR value of that cookie has to be a valid instruction for your target platform. So you have to jump through all these stupid hoops to make the thing work right. Finally got it. There's a whole paper at risesecurity.org that talks about how to do it. And we released it. Then Symantec contacts the press again and says, oh no, now there's an exploit out for it from Metasploit. It's exactly the same as our code. We're like, what do you mean exactly the same as your code? So finally, the Rise guys just emailed Symantec and said, dude, what the hell are you talking about? We spent like a month working on this technique. How do we mean exactly like your code? So after, I've got the emails here if anyone wants to call me out, and I'll show them on the screen. So Symantec guy comes back, and basically a couple emails go back and forth saying, well, how did you get around this technique? How did you get around this problem? It's not going to be reliable if you do it that way. And finally comes out, well, I didn't really have much time to dig into it. Sorry. So bullshit, Symantec. Anyways. Oh, and it's finally patched yesterday. So.
Okay, so one thing I'm going to talk about now is NFS services. This is kind of old school too. I like a lot of the old techniques because they still work.